Freedomizer Radio, where freedomizers freedomize freedom.
It's feline fury time.
Good morning, freedomizers and friends, and even foe. Welcome to Tiger Lily's Freedom Roar. I'm your host, Lily Gonzalez, known as Tiger Lily, and I will be here for the next hour on Freedomizer Radio. Thank you all who are tuning in, and if you happen to be listening live, it is the 26th of July, 2013. I have complained in the past. Anybody who's awake can recognize that mainstream media is not covering the real stories. And I like what the previous host, Cheryl C. the Power, had to say when she said, Zimmerman? Who's Zimmerman? And she said that we focus so much energy on the death of one man, then it's a distraction. Of course, it's sad that Trayvon Martin was killed. Of course, this whole thing is sad, of course. But it's a distraction, folks. It's a distraction, especially when you consider who the real enemy is. The real enemy is government. Anybody who's associated with government. And if it wasn't for police officers, politicians would not have power. I've been studying a little bit about history, and I'm really getting into this really old-timey guy from the 16th century. His name is Etienne de la Boissy, French guy, and I read his translation of an essay in which he talks about how it is that, what are we, cowards because we obey one man? How did Obama, or any president for that matter, or any leader, how did they get the power if it wasn't through us? Now think about the profoundness of that statement. And he says that in order to get rid and to just simply be free, simply refuse to give this person any power. Now that's easier said than done when you consider that the way laws are enforced, laws written by our so-called elected officials, is by killbots, armed gangbangers with a license to kill. It's not that easy to just say, I don't submit to your power. Of course, you're going to do what needs to be done to stay alive. But even people who do what these killbots tell them to do, even they have been killed, murdered. It's execution style. And I've covered so many stories, so many stories about the injustice, not just of being somebody with a badge who killed somebody, but then afterwards there is absolutely zero justice. And that is because there is one set of rules for the ruled and a completely different set of rules for the rulers and their killbots. When is the last time a cop, while on duty, who killed an innocent person went to prison? And even if they did, they got, more than likely, odds are, they got paid time off. So where is the justice in that? Now, mainstream media will focus forever on the distraction of Zimmerman and Trayvon Martin to deter us from the real issue, and that is our ever diminishing liberties in the U.S. We do not have a lot of liberties. Perhaps the one liberty that I still feel I have is the ability to get on my Skype and broadcast as broadly as I possibly can the crap that mainstream media refuses to do, because they are in bed with the killbots and the rulers. Whenever you see something in the mainstream media, where do the reporters get the vast majority of their information if it isn't right directly from the killbots, who of course have an agenda? That agenda is not, ladies and gentlemen, to serve and protect us. It is to serve and protect themselves and the rulers. So I came across, thanks to Teresa Smith, she's on Facebook, she's got quite a following. She, as well as Antonio Buehler. Now, Antonio is a West Point grad who had a really horrific experience, but at least he's alive, and at least the person that he tried to defend is alive. There are so many people who have been killed by cops that what we have in America is called democide. And that's a new word that I relatively recently learned about. It is when government kills its own people. And we look with horror at Stalin and Mao Zedong and Hitler and, you know, the African dictators. We look with horror and say, how can this happen? This will never happen in America. Well, guess what? The tyranny is here. The tyranny is already here. And is there a way to get our freedom back? Is there a way to reduce or get rid of the tyranny without bloodshed? It's never been done. As far as I know, where in history has any government gotten liberty or gotten a degree of freedom or gotten their government to shrink without bloodshed? I don't know that there's ever been a case, but I think with internet and with cyberspace and our social media, we have a great opportunity to come together and to first recognize that government is evil, and it's inherently evil. It's evil because it's not voluntary. So if it's not voluntary, let's call things what they really are. It's coercion. Tax is just a sweet name for theft. So, you know, and we've been indoctrinated and programmed to believe that paying our taxes is virtuous. Well, how can it be virtuous when that tax money that is going to our rulers is being used to slaughter, to commit genocide abroad? Whenever I pay taxes, it's not because I want to, it's because I have to. So anything that's coerced is evil. Things that are voluntary are virtuous. So I want to get to my report. This is a YouTube that Teresa Smith. Teresa is the mother of somebody who was of a young man, Ceasar, who was brutally killed by Anaheim cops. And on the description of this YouTube, and I'm going to air a good part of it, on the description of that YouTube, it said, on July 21st, 2013, over the Answer Coalition, along with 30 families whose loved ones were ruthlessly murdered by police officers across California, marched through downtown Anaheim to the police headquarters against police brutality. It coincided with the one-year anniversary of Manuel Diaz by Anaheim police, the subsequent police attack on families captured by a cell phone camera, and the days of rebellion against rampant police violence that followed. Every victim represented by these families was unarmed and innocent, yet not a single has had to answer for their crimes. This march and rally was historic and the first time so many families came together for one united action. The movement continues to build as more and more families have united on a single front to combat the racist, oppressive, and unchecked law enforcement system. Answer stands with all victims of police brutality and will continue to work with all families and victims in order to bring real change. Okay, now, about that commentary. First of all, this happened July 21st, 2013. Has anybody seen, today's July 26th, that's 5 days ago. Has anybody seen anything on CNN, Fox, MSNBC, CBS, ABC, anywhere to cover this? No, and you won't. They would rather keep you distracted with the death of one young man, Trayvon Martin, than to bring forth the real villains of our society here in America, which is the gangbangers in blue with guns and badges and a permission slip to murder with complete immunity, to murder innocent people. That's one of the points that I got from this. The other is that in the description it says that all of these people were unarmed. Well, why were they unarmed? All of the victims were unarmed. Could it be because California is becoming more and more like New York, where the right to bear arms is getting squashed? It's very few and far between people who get killed who are armed, especially, I'll say, law-abiding citizens. And I say that it makes me cringe to even use that word, law-abiding, because what the hell does that mean if it isn't just obedient sheeple? So I don't like to hear that that a victim was unarmed. A victim is a victim is a victim. I don't care if they had a weapon, because there's the case of Eric Scott, who was a concealed carry, law-abiding citizen, graduate from West Point, white guy, who was executed at a Costco, and everything was covered up by a horrible collusion between Costco and the Metropolitan Police Department, run by Sheriff Douglas Gestapo Gillespie. So Eric Scott was a white guy with a concealed carry permit, and somebody noticed his weapon, and they called 911. Cops came over, and a cowardly cop who gave Eric 3 conflicting commands. Eric lifted up his hands. He had his BlackBerry in one hand, and I don't think anything in the other hand, and he was executed, shot, I don't know how many times, shot dead. He was armed, but that does not make him any less of a victim than somebody who had not been armed, because clearly he was not armed to do harm. He was armed because he was exercising his Second Amendment so-called right to bear arms in Nevada, a right that everybody should have across in the world. Because really, when you think about it, there is no such thing as gun control. Because what is gun control? How will you control guns if it isn't by people with guns? In order to control guns, you have to have cops with guns to disarm people. Let me have you guys listen to some of this vid. And at the end, I'm going to name every single person that was killed, and there were 35 of them, 35 people who were murdered. Their families were represented at this gigantic march, protest march.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sonia Hernandez. My brother Martin Angel Hernandez was murdered by Officer Dan Hertl from the Anaheim Police Department.
My brother Javier Zola Jr. was murdered on October 1st, 2012 by a police officer.
He was murdered 4 years ago by Mark Alvarez of the San Bernardino Police Department.
Tony was murdered by Lakewood Sheriff.
Pomona Police took his life.
Manuel Diaz, my son, had just been 25 for 8 days before he was murdered by Nick Benelik, a cop.
He was 19 years old.
He was only 22 years old.
2 weeks before he graduates.
Supposed to be getting married 2 weeks from now.
He was 23 years old. He was shot 23 times. 1 bullet for every year of his life.
My son was shot twice in the chest.
They shot 48 rounds at our son.
They shot 48 rounds at our son. Talk about overkill. Cops are cowards. I don't associate with them anymore, and I don't associate with people who sympathize with them. They are cowardly, thuggish murderers, and they are the reason we in America are losing all of our liberties. When somebody says, well, what other country would you go to? It doesn't matter, because all countries have governments. And as long as there is a government, there will be rulers and followers and killbots.
Twice to the head, once to the heart.
2 officers shot Stephen 10 times.
They shot him 4 times in the upper torso.
And he shot him in the back.
He was shot in the back of the head. He was shot 7 times in the back.
The first shot was a lethal shot to the back of the head.
Went and chased my brother down, shot him from the back.
He felt the need to taser him 4 times after being handcuffed.
They double teamed him, came from 2 different directions, and shot him 10 times in the back. Made him lay in the ground for over 28 minutes to bleed out and die.
That is just horrific, you guys. And this is happening all across America. These are just voices in California with a concentration of Anaheim. But this is happening all across America. Where the hell is mainstream media covering this? You'll never hear it from them. You'll only hear it from alternative media sources like Freedomizer Radio and others. Here's the next clip.
Anaheim felt it their need to execute him and shoot him in the head so close that it left flash burns on his face.
The handcuffs were so tight that they ripped his wrist.
He turned around with his hands up, and the officer shot him in his heart.
He was trying to fix the tire when this man came out of his house in his boxers and his t-shirt with his gun drawn, never identified himself as a police officer.
He then dragged them to the street, to the back of the van, and left them there.
Abre la puerta,
Opens the door,
y le dispara.
and shoots him.
These are real, ladies and gentlemen. These are real accounts of the family, surviving families of the police brutality that we have here in America. And of course, this is in California, but it's representative of what's going on all over the USA. Here's another short clip.
I know it's hard for most Americans who don't live in neighborhoods like mine to believe that gang unit officers would execute a young man in cold blood and then plant a gun on him.
Right. And the reason most people would not believe that is because they're busy spinning their wheels, trying to make enough money to pay off the government first, and then with the leftovers, have a life. Get the groceries, pay your rent, food, clothing, shelter. That's what we have devolved into here in America. The land of the free, home of the brave. Yep. Where we have more prison population than per capita than any other nation on the planet, and that includes Communist China and the former Communist Russia combined.
My son was not in a gang, even though they said he was.
They claimed that he had a knife. He didn't have anything. He didn't have a knife. He didn't have a gun. He didn't have any type of weapon.
They said that he lunged himself to the cop. Then they changed it that he had a gun. And you know what that police officer said? Well, sometimes people confuse stripes with flags.
They said he was on parole. He's never even been to jail.
Then he had his cell phone in his hands. They said he had a gun.
The witnesses testified that my son never had a gun.
There was a witness that saw him executed. They discredited her. They said she was biased.
Interesting. It's happening all over America. And if you're not a surviving relative of somebody who's been murdered, then more and more it's going to be affecting you. It's going to be your mother who gets victimized, your father, your children, your spouse, your niece or nephew, your aunts and uncles. Nobody is immune in this so-called land of the free, home of the brave.
Manuel was running for someone he never even seen before.
He's killed 4 people, and he's a sergeant now.
I still don't have a DA report. It's been 3.5 years.
And still today, I do not know who that officer is.
Badge or no badge, murder is murder.
No one should have the right to kill another human being.
They think because they got a badge
No, they're not going to go to jail. I'm sorry, my friends. They're not going to go to jail because, you see, they have a thing called immunity in the United States. If a gangbanger wants to or kill somebody, they're protected. They're protected by every law. They're protected by the mainstream media to continue to do these heinous acts against humanity. Never mind that it's against Americans. Never mind that it's against somebody who was or wasn't in jail, who was or wasn't on parole, who's black or white or brown or yellow or red or purple. Never mind any of that. Never mind what ethnicity. Never mind that they were illegal. These are crimes against humanity, and the worst criminals are coming right out of the United States of America.
A police officer stoned my son, the father of my grandchildren.
Manuel was a loving son, my only son. I'll never have a grandchild from him.
I'll never get to see what he was going to grow to be.
My brother was a good father. I think it's bullshit to think that such a good person could get shot in the head with an AR-15.
I know all you guys know how it feels just to know your son is not here no more.
When I see the pain in these families that have just recently lost somebody, I relive it all over again.
There's brothers, sisters, mothers, fathers, uncles, aunts. There's everybody out here.
I'm here because he deserves justice. My kids deserve justice.
This is my favorite. It's only six seconds, but I have something to say about this one.
We're not going to stand idly and watch you murder us.
And I know Martin Luther King had a dream that we would be judged by the content of our character rather than the color of our skin. I bet he's rolling over in his grave in shock, saying, "This is not the dream I wanted. I did not want equal tyranny. I wanted further freedom." So, yeah, the tyranny is equal, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't matter what color you are. If you're in front of a killbot, the only thing that matters is that you submit your obedience to him or her. These are power-thirsty addicts. They are addicted to power. They thirst for blood. And they would eat your flesh and get away with it.
We made a promise to my brother that as long as we live, we're going to fight.
Because we know there's no justice. Look around. It's just us.
I'm usually quiet about a lot of things, but I'm not quiet about this.
You guys, y'all give me so much strength.
And I never, ever thought that people felt the same pain that I feel.
If it wasn't for all these people, I don't know what she would be right now. I really want to say that everybody being here in solidarity for each and every loved one here, all the faces that we're seeing.
They don't want to see you come together. They don't want you to unite. They want to lie to you, steal your kids away, and tell you that it's justified. But guess what? We say different.
This is the way that I stand up and fight for my family.
We contacted people here in Southern California. The Southern California people contacted the people in Northern California, Central California, and look what we've got, and we're going to get bigger.
Yeah, they're going to get bigger. But the idea that we can fix this problem by using the system is, in my viewpoint, not true. And historically, when has a government ever recognized the error of his ways without absolute bloodshed? Isn't that what had to happen in World War II and in every world war and in the Civil War? I mean, really, when you think about it, the South just wanted to peacefully succeed from the North. And everybody gives Abraham Lincoln so much credit that he was all about freeing the slaves. No, he wasn't. He was a ruler. He was a tyrant. The slaves eventually would have been freed because that's just human nature, is to recognize what is virtuous and what isn't. And it is very obvious to us, and it was very obvious to a lot of people in the North and even to a lot of people in the South, that owning another human being was immoral. So Abraham Lincoln, he used that sense of morality to beat the South. But the South, really, all they wanted to do was to exercise their constitutional right to succeed peacefully. And when Abraham Lincoln recognized that these these Confederates were serious about this, he said, no, a nation divided cannot stand. So it was more important to him to keep the Union together than anything else. That superseded the issue of slavery. That superseded everything. Keeping the nation together by force. And it caused the slaughter of some, I don't know, but more people were killed in the Civil War than World War I, World War II, and the Vietnam War together.
We have to support our communities. This is the work that has to be done. And it's going to take, you see, the village for any of this to change.
I'm overwhelmed. There's so many families. We shouldn't have to be here.
Those of us that have been fighting this for so long know that this is a heck of a fight.
I come to tell you today that we've come too far to turn around now.
And I just hope that we continue to fight. We can't stop. We have to continue to fight.
We've been standing strong with other families about our son, about your son, sons to come.
I've already lost my son. There's nothing I can do to get him back. But I can come out here, stand up, and fight back to make sure somebody else doesn't lose theirs.
I'm all for exposing, and what these people are doing is absolutely, in my book, heroic, to get up and speak and testify what it is that the state has done to their loved one. However, to want to fight fire with fire or to use words like fight, that's suicide. You cannot fight City Hall. You can't fight Congress. And the reason you can't is because there are so many killbots around to enforce their laws. This is why mainstream media didn't even cover this historic protest march. It's because there was no rioting. Had there been some rioting, they would have covered it. And somebody would have used it as an excuse to declare martial law and go door to door at the people who have permission slips to carry weapons, to confiscate their weapons, just like happened in Katrina and just like will happen again, which is why I don't believe in permission slips to bear arms. So what is the solution? If you can't fight City Hall and you can't fight back, what is the solution? Well, at the top of the show, I talked about this very enlightened French guy in the 16th century, Etienne de la Boissy. And he said, don't feed the root. If you don't feed the root, the branches wither and die. Translation, don't vote. Do not vote. To vote, in my opinion, is immoral. Because voting basically is picking one side to point a gun at your neighbors. So don't vote. Don't vote. Do what you need to do to to grieve. And this is a wonderful way of doing it. Peaceful protesting, peacefully educating the public. But how is the public going to be educated when mainstream media doesn't even cover it? That's why these types of productions need to go viral. And the last I saw, there were like 82 views on it, and I think it just got published. So, yeah, don't vote. Do what you can to go out of your way not to pay taxes. I'm not saying break the law, because you break the law, somebody finds out, the forces of Samson will come at your door. You cannot beat the system. But when given an opportunity between purchasing something where you don't have to pay so much taxes, or maybe instead of working for somebody, maybe find a way that where you can get tax exemptions, feed the beast as little as possible to keep yourself on the low profile. Also key to the trend around is how we raise our children. Are we sending them to public schools? Because really public schools are nothing more than indoctrination camps. Just look at the school buses. They look exactly like prison buses. And then our most precious commodities, our children, are forced to be into these indoctrination programs, camps, and are told what to think instead of taught how to think.
We ain't gonna let down and we ain't gonna back down. We're gonna fight for justice and fight for what we deserve.
I will never give up the fight for my son.
Fight, fight, fight. You can't win. All we can do is learn from the experience, recognize that the violence begins at home when we spank our children. And I know I'm going to have a lot of people text me, email me, and say, I got spanked and I needed to be spanked. But no. When you spank a child, you're demanding their obedience the way a cop demands obedience from us. It's the beginning of a conditioning cycle of obeying authority. This is probably my favorite clip.
I sit here and I see the cops looking out the window and they're just looking like, ha-ha. Well, you know what? Yeah, it's going to be ha-ha. We'll see who gets the last laugh, okay? Fuck you.
I love that when he says, fuck you. Because the cops are out there, they're watching, they're making sure nobody gets out of line. And this guy, he sees it. He sees them. He sees them for the murderers that they are. He knows that if any one of them steps out of line, they will come down on people, even peaceful people, with the force of the government. And that is a force that cannot be won. So he exercised his 1A and said, I see you. Fuck you. I love that.
I just have one question. How much longer is this going to go on?
It'll go on as long as we continue to buy into this myth, this most dangerous superstition of humanity called authority. That's how long it's gonna go on. Let me just, before I go to break, name the people that were killed, that were represented at this memorial, at this protest march. And there were 35 of them. Manuel Diaz, murdered by Anaheim police, July 22, 2012. Joel Acevedo, murdered by Anaheim police, July 22, 2012. Jeremy Marks, shot by Los Angeles police, May 8, 2013. Martin Angel Hernandez, murdered by Anaheim police, March 6, 2012. José de la Trinidad, murdered by police in Willowbrook, November 10, 2012. Mike Nida, murdered by Downey police, October 22, 2011. John Cabrera, shot by Long Beach police, January 26, 2011. Andres Avila, murdered by Pomona police, October 16, 2011. Doug Zerby, murdered by Long Beach police, December 12, 2010. Ceasar Ray Cruz, murdered by Anaheim police, December 11, 2009. James M. Moore, murdered by Kern County Sheriffs, August 24, 2012. Justin Hertl, murdered by Anaheim police, November 14, 23. Tony Francis, murdered by Lakewood Sheriffs, August 24, 2012. Marcel Ceja, murdered by Anaheim police, November 4, 2011. Javier Arazona, murdered by West Valley, LA Police, October 1, 2012. Roscoe Cambridge, murdered by Anaheim Police, January 19, 2012. David Raya, murdered by Anaheim Police, August 16, 2011. Joe Whitehouse, murdered by Anaheim Police, July 16, 2007. Ernest Duenes, Jr., murdered by Manteca Police, June 8, 2011. David Silva, murdered by Kern County deputies, May 7, 2013. Jason Bitts, murdered by Off-Duty Santa Ana Police, October 31, 2011. Marcel Luis Ceja, murdered by Anaheim Police, November 14, 2011. Ismael Lopez, murdered by Long Beach Police, August 26, 2011. Rigoberto Arceo, murdered by LA County Sheriff's Deputy, May 11, 2013. Stephen Boers, murdered by Downey Police, March 20, 2010. Kenneth Harding, murdered by San Francisco Police, July 16, 2011. Bobby Henning, murdered by Paramount Police, February 21, 2012. Idris Stelly, murdered by San Francisco Police, February 12, 2001. Valeria Tachikin, murdered by Border Patrol, September 28, 2012. James Earl Rivera Jr., murdered by Stockton Police, July 22, 2010. Everardo Torres, murdered by Madera Police, October 22, 2002. Lamont Harmon, murdered by Sacramento County Sheriff's Department, February 6, 2012. Davon Johnson, murdered by San Bernardino Police, May 31, 2009. Alan Bluford, murdered by Oakland Police, May 6, 2012. Oscar Grant, murdered by BART Police, January 1, 2009. And to all other victims of police brutality in California and across the United States. That was what was posted on that YouTube. 35 people. And that's just the tip of the iceberg, ladies and gentlemen. It's just the tip of the iceberg of our loved ones being murdered. And more, it doesn't matter what race you are, what color, what religion. Nothing matters. The only thing that matters is that you have a killbot on steroids who was probably a crack baby, who now legally has a gun and a badge and has the permit to murder. This is heinous, and this is happening all across America.
I sit here and I see the cops looking out the window and they're just looking like, ha-ha. Well, you know what? Yeah, it's going to be ha-ha. We'll see who gets the last laugh, okay? Fuck you.
Freedomizer Radio, where freedomizers freedomize freedom.